some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
This hour, because there's been a development in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie.
There are some puzzling new developments tonight in the ongoing search for Nancy Guthrie.
The 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. It was not the ransom demand that redirected the investigation. It was not even the words inside the messages. What changed everything was where those messages appeared. On a morning investigators would later describe as pivotal, 2 new communications connected to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie surfaced unexpectedly. They were not delivered through official channels. They did not arrive at a police hotline or federal tip portal. Instead, they were sent directly to a media organization. That single decision forced investigators to reconsider their assumptions. Individuals attempting real negotiations rarely seek publicity. People trying to remain hidden do not normally invite attention. So the focus shifted. The question was no longer simply what was being asked. The question became why someone wanted the situation seen. To understand the significance of that focus, investigators returned to the foundation of the case, the confirmed facts. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old and lived alone in a quiet neighborhood in Tucson, Arizona. Her life followed a steady rhythm built over years. Regular phone calls with family, church services attended online, a carefully organized home, and predictable daily habits.
Nothing in her routine suggested risk or instability. On the evening before she disappeared, she shared dinner with relatives. That timeline is verified. She was driven home afterward. She entered her residence. The door closed. That moment became the last confirmed sighting of her alive. The following morning, she failed to answer a scheduled call. Concern grew quickly. Family members went to check on her and immediately sensed something was wrong. The home showed no obvious disturbance. Nothing was broken, no door forced open. Yet key personal belongings remained untouched. Her phone was still inside. Medication remained where it should have been. Items essential to daily living had not moved. When someone leaves voluntarily, investigators expect preparation. Essential items disappear with them. In this case, nothing suggested preparation. Law enforcement responded, and the situation transitioned from concern to active investigation. Officials stated early that the circumstances did not resemble a routine missing person report. Certain indicators suggested Nancy had not left by choice, though many details were never publicly disclosed. From that moment forward, time became the most valuable piece.
Investigators reconstructed the night minute by minute. 2 timestamps quickly stood out. At 1:47 a.m., Nancy's doorbell camera stopped recording. Technical failures happen, but the timing drew attention because of what followed. At 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker lost its wireless connection to her phone. The device itself continued working, only the connection ended. That distinction mattered. Pacemakers communicate with nearby devices. When the connection breaks, it usually indicates distance between the person and the phone. Investigators now had to define a window, 41 minutes, between 1:47 and 2:28 a.m. A contained period inside the home where something occurred. 41 minutes is not chaos. It suggests opportunity, time to move carefully, time to act without urgency, time consistent with preparation rather than randomness. Internally, the investigation began to change tone. The question shifted from whether something happened to how organized the event might have been. While detectives worked through the timeline, another layer unfolded quietly: digital analysis. Modern investigations rely as much on invisible evidence as physical clues. Phones, routers, wireless networks, and nearby devices constantly interact,
leaving traces behind, even when users believe nothing is happening. Investigators examined cellular tower connections and device activity around the neighborhood.
Officials later acknowledged that cell data had already helped flag irregular patterns. That wording suggested something unusual had been identified early. When digital behavior does not match normal patterns, it becomes a focal point. Around the same time, a separate development complicated the investigation. A man later identified as Derek Kelly sent messages pretending to be connected to the disappearance. He demanded money and placed a brief call designed to appear credible. Investigators traced the communication quickly and arrested him. His involvement did not advance the search for Nancy directly, but it demonstrated how rapidly digital trails can expose false claims.
Near half a Bitcoin. Such instability rarely reflects controlled negotiation. Consistent demands maintain leverage. Changing demands often signal uncertainty or lack of authenticity. Investigators were now balancing multiple layers at once: a fixed timeline, digital anomalies, misleading communications, and an ongoing absence of confirmed location. Nancy Guthrie remained missing. Every message had to be evaluated carefully because misinformation can divert resources away from meaningful evidence. As analysts compared the communications, attention moved away from what the messages said and toward how they behaved. Both messages had been routed through media rather than authorities. That deviation mattered. In verified abduction cases, communication usually follows predictable pathways: direct contact with family or investigators. Introducing a public intermediary increases risk unless publicity itself serves a purpose. Investigators considered whether exposure might have been intentional. Public communication changes dynamics. It transforms private negotiation into public influence. Around this time, reporting indicated the sender may have contacted
The same media outlet days after the disappearance, rather than immediately. Delayed communication introduces new possibilities. The sender may not have been involved initially, may have waited deliberately, or may have been entirely disconnected from the original event. Each possibility required investigation. Law enforcement pursued two parallel tracks. Publicly, search efforts continued with community alerts and press briefings. Privately, analysts focused on data reconstruction and behavioral mapping. Every action leaves structure behind, even when obvious evidence is absent. Patterns began emerging. The ransom demands lacked consistency. The communication channel was unconventional. Timing did not align with the disappearance itself. Individually, these irregularities meant little. Together, they suggested instability within the narrative being presented. Digital analysis expanded further. Specialized teams examined which devices connected to cellular towers near Nancy's home during the critical window. They were not analyzing conversations or personal data, only presence, which devices appeared, how long they remained, and whether any behaved unusually. Often, the most important signal is the one that does not belong.
A device present briefly at an unusual hour, a signal that moved differently from normal neighborhood patterns. Those details rarely solve cases instantly, but they narrow focus. At nearly the same time, Nancy's daughter Savannah returned to television for the first time since the disappearance. The appearance coincided with the emergence of new messages. Investigators do not ignore timing overlaps, even when no direct connection exists. Visibility keeps public attention alive, and sustained attention can influence behavior, particularly if someone believes scrutiny has faded. Analysts also revisited the fluctuating ransom amounts. The progression from millions to thousands suggested weakening leverage rather than strategic negotiation. When demands collapse instead of stabilize, investigators ask whether the communicator truly controls the situation being described. If not, the messages become noise, dangerous because they distract from genuine signals. Through all of this, one element remained unchanged: the original timeline.
The camera stopped at 1:47 a.m. The pacemaker disconnected at 2:28 a.m. Evidence anchors an investigation when narratives shift. New claims are tested against fixed data, not the other way around.
Another detail quietly gained importance: access. Nancy's home showed no sign of forced entry. That fact narrowed possibilities immediately. Whoever entered may have been invited, possessed a key, or understood how to enter without resistance. Access implies familiarity, and familiarity directs investigators toward relationships rather than randomness. Detectives began mapping connections. Who knew her routines? Who had visited before? Who understood the environment? In controlled settings, access becomes the first critical step. Once access exists, opportunity follows. The earlier arrest tied to false messages reinforced another point. Investigative response in this case was active and fast. That reality creates pressure. Pressure can cause mistakes. Mistakes reveal patterns. As weeks passed, public updates slowed. Silence does not mean inactivity. Often, it signals focus. Investigators were no longer asking broad questions. They were narrowing possibilities through elimination, comparing timelines with behavior, data with relationships, and movement with access. In investigations like this, answers rarely arrive suddenly. They emerge when independent pieces begin pointing toward the same conclusion.
The case increasingly relied on alignment between timeline evidence, access indicators, digital mapping, and behavioral observations. Behind the scenes, forensic work continued. DNA processing, video analysis, and vehicle tracking required time and precision. Thousands of hours of surveillance footage were reviewed. Not dramatic scenes, but fragments of movement and passing vehicles aligned with the critical window. One camera captured a vehicle several miles from Nancy's home around the same time frame. The sighting did not confirm involvement, but its timing placed it within investigative interest. Alignment alone can justify deeper examination. This is how investigations advance, not through sudden revelations, but through gradual convergence. Each confirmed fact strengthens the framework, while unreliable signals fade away. The timeline remains steady. The evidence remains consistent. And as possibilities narrow, investigators move closer to understanding not just what happened inside that 41-minute window, but who had the ability to make it happen.